Welcome to the Style and Soul podcast, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of fashion, jewelry, and retail. Hi, I'm Jenny Livitz, owner of Pink Lagoon, a lifestyle boutique in Solana Beach, California. After being in the heart of retail for over 2 decades, I wanted to create a space where we could go deeper into the stories and personal journeys of the designers, founders, and creative minds shaping what we wear and how we live. From the showroom to the boardroom, this is where creativity and business come together and discover how to build a life with style and soul. So today on Style and Soul, we have Dr. Erica Oberg. Erica, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you about all things women, hormones, wellness, longevity. Maybe just start by telling our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into this field.
Sure. Yeah, it's nice to be here, Jenny. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I've been in the space of women's health and integrative medicine as a naturopathic doctor for almost 25 years now. Wow. I started medical school back in 1999, and it has been just a blessing of a career. It's just been such an honor to get to partner with patients and help them find some empowerment through understanding their bodies and really just feeling better. I'm really passionate about helping people thrive at feeling their best, their optimal. I don't believe that healthcare should be about just managing your conditions or getting by, right, or looking for Band-Aids and solutions like that. So that has been my mission through my career, to really help people understand through the combination of science and clinical research and also the wisdom of our bodies. So that's a little bit about my philosophy. But if you're interested, I'm happy to share a little bit about my path and my journey to get here.
I would love to hear that. And then if you can speak a little bit to, the concept of longevity medicine that you speak about when I was researching on your blog and stuff, because I think that is something that a lot of women right now are confused about. And I know even for me personally, like going to the regular doctor, like I just recently went and I had an experience where I was like, it was like they were resolved. Like all of the symptoms I was feeling, it was just like, well, that's what it is. And this woman was like a little bit younger than me even. She had younger kids, but it was just interesting how like I just didn't want to, none of us want to just accept that and take that at face value. Like, so it's so wonderful to hear you say there are things that women in their 40s and beyond can be doing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There are so many things. And your experience is way too common. I mean, I can't tell you a day that goes by without a new patient or even established patients saying exactly your experience, that they went to their, insurance-based conventional doctor and were told, oh, it's just aging. It's just perimenopause. It just is going to be awful like this for the rest of your life. But I mean, that's ridiculous. Here we are at middle age and we're literally planning for the second half of our lives and signing up to just feel subpar for half of your life. Like men wouldn't put up with that. Why would women even think about putting up with something like that? So there are so many options and ways that we can help thrive. And it's a pivotal time in our lives, at middle age. We're finally wise enough to know how to ask for what we need. Often the children are old enough that we have a little bit more independence and finally a moment for the first time probably in decades to prioritize ourselves and to be met with a healthcare system that tells you to just give up. You're just going to be in pain and tired and losing your hair for the rest of your life. It's just not a very satisfying answer.
No, it's not. It's sort of unacceptable. And I feel like my mom's generation and obviously her mom's generation were so silenced about this stuff. And it was just like and I feel sad about it when I actually think about it, because it's almost like they just sort of warriored through it and there was no dialogue. And I will say what I'm so grateful for our generation is that we're like, and it's also social media. It's also just like how loud it can be. It's like we're finally talking about it and taking away some of the stigma around talking about it, because it's loud right now. I feel like it's very loud and we just need to be more educated. So tell us just like what do you think we're missing education wise? Like, what are the things when you're speaking about longevity medicine or hormone HRT or bioidentical hormones? Like, just maybe give us like the 101 on things we could be doing in your experience to navigate perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the first thing I want all women to know is that there are options and you don't have to feel like crap. So that's the most important step. Once you kind of know that that's a possibility, then we can talk about the tools. I think the next most important topic to address is the scientific evidence. There was this research study back in the early 2000s called the Women's Health Initiative. And it got a ton of press because they stopped it early and released the results before they did a full analysis. And that study showed a small increased risk of cancers, breast cancer, in women who were taking hormone therapy. Now, there had been dozens of studies prior to that, going back to the 1950s, that showed no risk. And there's been dozens of studies since that have showed no increased risk. But this one got a lot of press. And unfortunately, it changed our approach to menopause and hormone replacement. Women were scared off of their hormones immediately, and a lot of suffering happened with that. And the repercussions are such that, I was in medical school at that time, actually residency. So we were just learning, the beginnings of that. And it scared all of us because the study wasn't retracted for a couple of years. And I feel like a whole generation of physicians, have just not known how to do good perimenopause and menopause care, or really, hormones across the life cycle in general, because there's so many options. But what we know now from the Scientific Research International is that there really is no increased risk with estrogen, bioidentical estrogens, and breast cancer. There is a small increased risk that's associated with the synthetic progesterones, the progestins, not bioidentical progesterone, but progestins. But what they always fail to point out are the myriad benefits of hormone therapy, right? Bioidentical hormones protect your bones, protect your brain, reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease, not to mention improve your quality of life, your skin, keep your vaginal health healthy so you don't have prolapse and urinary tract infections, and et cetera. So we kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater, and it was on false evidence. So a big piece of my work is just re-educating women and my colleagues, the nurse practitioners and other doctors that I work with, about what the research studies actually have shown over the decades.
It's so sad, hearing you say that, because it was probably like a decade or two of women who just like weren't doing HRT when they probably needed to.
Yeah, like most of the last 25 years.
Wow. So what hormone balance program do you recommend?
Well, I think it needs to be a pretty individualized approach, right? Every woman has different symptoms. Every woman has, a different place in her journey. If you think back to your sort of pre-perimenopause time, right? Like every cycle is kind of different, right? Your periods are not the same as your girlfriend down the street. Some have heavy, some have light. So our hormones are variable. And so our strategies to get through perimenopause and menopause also need to be really personalized. And so what we've done at my clinic is developed a 3-month hormone balancing program. We call it the Hormone Concierge. And through that program, we walk women through a very tight hand-holding process of understanding what's going on, experimenting with either hormones or herbs or nutrients, other things. And I follow a very stepwise system of gradually increasing your doses, monitoring for symptoms. I have health coaches involved that really help you dial in, the diet and the fitness, because as we probably are all experiencing, what worked a decade ago isn't working anymore, right? How often have we heard our girlfriends say this, like, I'm eating the same thing I've always eaten. I eat really, really well, and yet there's 10 extra pounds.
Totally. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. So anyway, we have a 90-day program that really walks women through sort of that self-discovery and finding their optimal dose. And then once we're kind of there, then I bring in the lab testing to confirm that we're at a dose that's appropriate, that's going to give you enough for those benefits, that's not going to give you too much to give you increased risks of anything. So anyway, I'm pretty proud of our scientific method for helping women balance their hormones. We get a lot of positive feedback on just how empowering that program is.
That's really wonderful. So yeah, Erica, if you could just tell us, like, what are some of the signs that women are experiencing perimenopause symptoms? Like, what are some of the common signs? I mean, we know obviously weight gain in that midsection, but I feel like there's so many things.
There's so many things, definitely. I mean, I think some of the ones that probably impact us the most that women try to power through are some of the cognitive and the mental emotional symptoms, feeling like you can always losing your keys and losing your stuff and forgetting where you need to go and leaving half the things behind at the house. That sort of, frazzled feeling is not just a hectic lifestyle. I mean, that doesn't help things, but part of that cognitive chaos is related to some of the hormonal changes, including our stress hormone changes. So those brain symptoms, those mood swings, feeling like you have PMS all month long, the rage, anger that comes out of nowhere, finding yourself screaming at your husband for the dishwasher, those types of things are hormonally driven. And once we balance things out, you're like, oh, I feel like myself again.
Yes.
So,
yes. I mean, I feel like there's so many symptoms, like if you've had babies, like those, what you felt like when you were pregnant almost. Like,
yeah, which is a perfect hormonal example, right?
Yeah.
When you're pregnant or postpartum, when the hormones are now like non-existent and you're coming back to normal, like those are hormonal experiences of imbalance and they don't feel good, do they?
When you're high functioning female, which most of us are, and a lot of the women that are listening to this are, it feels like you're losing your mind. Like, and it feels like you can't function at the same capacity and like not being able to get your words and all those things. It makes you feel like you're declining when, like you said, we should be thriving. So I love that you're bringing some hope to this conversation, that there are solutions. So it sounds like one of the big ones for you is HRT. What are your feelings on, because there's a lot going on, I don't want to say controversy, but a little bit, just because it's not necessarily FDA approved yet, with the whole peptide therapy, NAD, all this like regenerative medicine stuff. If you could shed some of your wisdom and explain it to our audience, like what are some of the benefits of these anti-aging longevity tools that are accessible to us if we choose to use them?
That's a great question. I'd love to educate your audience on it, because those are options for feeling better that really, I mean, they're pretty non-hormonal, right? In terms of the tools that you just mentioned right there. So when I think about longevity and anti-aging in general, we're thinking about, and I have a good blog post that we can link in your notes.
Yeah.
If people want to read more. But I think about a couple major pillars. One is our mitochondrial function. And that's if you remember back to high school biology, that's the power plant inside your cells where we make energy. So that declines very early really starting in our 30s. And so mitochondrial support is a huge place where we want to tackle longevity. Inflammation is a huge issue. If we have high levels of inflammation from dozens of different underlying causes, but that inflammation is basically going to be, taking tons of vital resources from the immune system and just making us feel awful. So those are some major ones. Hormones, of course, are a big pillar of longevity and anti-aging. And then the fourth one that I want to always talk to people about is kind of the concept of like cellular starvation, right? So our micronutrient deficiencies. Do we have all of the raw materials on board to make new healthy cells? So usually when we're tackling anti-aging in a big picture, first I want to think about, the energy producing systems, the mitochondria, and getting women a little bit more energy so that they can do the meal prep. So you can get some nutritious food. So you can try to get just more calories, right? Like a lot of us undereat chronically and we're just malnourished. And it's always, a kind of a mind game because women think I can't eat more because I'm going to gain weight. But part of why your body's holding on to that weight is because it's starving. So we have to kind of look at all of those pillars. So NAD that you asked about, NAD is basically the fuel for the mitochondria. So it's a very fast, immediate way where we can start to, put some rocket fuel in the engine, so to speak, and boost things back up.
I like the way you explain that. So the NAD is boosting the mitochondria.
Yeah, it's basically fuel for the mitochondria. So NAD is the last step in a biochemical process of B vitamin conversion, starting with B3, niacin, right, and ending up as NAD. And that NAD is what the mitochondria use to make energy. And so if we don't have any, then that becomes the rate limiting step and we can't make cellular energy. So it's often a quick fix for boosting more energy, but also for the important repair processes that the mitochondria use. We use cellular energy not just to feel energetic, we use that cellular energy to do things like repair damaged DNA, right? And so when we are able to repair that DNA, then we're reducing the impact of aging that it accumulates over time. Each time the cells split, right, and make a new cell, if we're doing that with sloppy DNA that's got damage and frayed edges and things like that, you're going to have sloppy cells that, for example, don't have enough collagen, right, or don't produce enough energy. So when we repair the mitochondria with NAD, but with other things as well, then we really are working at that cellular mechanism of repairing and restoring normal function, not just slowing aging, but actually getting better.
I love all that. I love that. So what are your thoughts on peptide therapy? And I mean, I think people just think there's one peptide, it's all this GLP-1 and that's the only one, but there's so many different peptides. I would love to know your opinion on peptides.
Yeah, so there are hundreds of peptides out there. There's probably a dozen that we use in our clinic on a regular basis.
Do you have favorites?
Favorites? Well, you might be surprised to hear a natural doctor say it, but the GLP-1s are pretty amazing.
Yeah.
They really do change things dramatically for people. But peptides they're very small proteins. They are generally not natural. They're actually, most of them are synthetic. They're made in very high-tech, biochemistry labs by brilliant PhDs that, can biohack the exact peptide that will hit that exact receptor. But what they generally do is stimulate your body to do something that it would do normally. For example, there's a lot of peptides in the space of supporting growth hormone, what we could call sort of growth hormone mimetics. And that class of peptides are going to be working with the growth hormone in the brain, which is going to help a lot of regenerative and repair processes. And what a lot of people don't appreciate is our normal circadian rhythm. We release most of our growth hormone at night, and it's triggered by deep sleep, dark, and things that we just don't have anymore. I don't know. Right. If you have sleep issues, but so many people are sleeping in a light polluted room. You've got devices all around you. Your brain's running away. It's really, we have sort of an epidemic of poor quality sleep. And when you don't get sleep, you're not releasing growth hormone. And when you're not releasing growth hormone, your body is compromised on its repair, on its regeneration, on its ability to optimize building muscle and burning fat for energy. So that whole class of peptides can be very helpful.
So your favorite one is the GLP-1s?
I mean, those are just, we use a lot of them because weight is a common issue. And, when we feel a little leaner and a little more confident and a little lighter when we're going to the gym, it's just easier to follow a healthy lifestyle. And they do a lot, not just in terms of, the physiology of like insulin sensitizing and helping us use our fuel more efficiently. They have a mechanism in the brain that really turns off what they call the food noise. And that can be really powerful for people while they're going through the process of, renegotiating their relationship with food and their lifestyle habits. So similar to the way we do our 90-day hormone program, we do weight loss in kind of that same handheld process over a 3-month period at a time, so that you're not just using the medications. We're starting with microdoses, finding the right dose for you. We're combining it with coaching. So you're learning how to change your relationship with your plate size. And we find people are really successful. If you go through 90 days or 12 weeks, chances are you're going to be 10 to 15 pounds lighter. And that gives people enough confidence and capacity and positive experience of what it feels to eat less and change your relationship with food. And many people are successful from there on out without the medications.
Looking to refresh your wardrobe with pieces that feel as good as they look? Come visit us at Pink Lagoon, a lifestyle boutique in Solana Beach, California, where fashion meets intention. From curated clothing and jewelry to elevated essentials, we help you find your unique style with soul. Not local? No problem. Shop anytime at pinklagoon.com. That's www.pinklagoon.com. Come and discover your new favorite look today. Aren't there other benefits like for women in peri or menopause that the GLP-1s are helping with?
I hear this from a lot of patients. So yes, the scientific literature really isn't there, but inflammation is a big piece that women tell me. And I think it's a combination, when you are eating less and you're losing some weight, the body just gets more efficient. It gets thrifty. I think about it like, the couch potatoes sitting around, right? And that happens at kind of a cellular level. If we're just lying on the couch and all of this abundance of, food and chips and things like that, the body just gets lazy. So when we are on calorie restricted diet, calorie restriction is really the only thing that shows up in the literature as a proven technique for longevity. So when we're on a more calorie restricted diet, the body has to go look for that stored energy, right? Which is stored in fat and stored in inflammation. It has to clean up its act. It can't waste all of those immune resources on, inflammation and other things. So I think a lot of the benefits that we see separate from weight loss are a result of that lower calorie weight loss, just, a more efficient metabolism.
What are some of the biggest myths or misunderstandings you see in women around menopause and hormones and aging, and how you're able to help shift them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a big myth is that this is just the way it's going to be, and it's just going to get worse and worse from here on out. That's definitely a myth. That there's no scientific evidence to giving women hormone replacement, or that it has to be the lowest dose for as short of a time as possible. Definitely a myth. I have women in their 80s who are still on hormone replacement therapy and thriving. Those are big ones for sure. Yeah. Circling back to, some of the other symptoms, aside from like the ones that we think about, like body pain is a huge one. Frozen shoulder, achy joints, not recovering from your workouts, getting injured every time you try to push your workout even 5 minutes harder or longer. A lot of that is perimenopause.
And a lot of that can be fixed with some HRT?
Can be fixed with HRT and with other things that support those other pillars of longevity. So it might be tackling the inflammation a little more directly. Yeah. Things like omega-3 fatty acids in the diet are amazing for that. Herbs like turmeric and berberine can be amazing for that. So there's lots of tools. Reducing the inflammatory foods is really helpful for that. So getting rid of the fried stuff and the poor quality animal products, basically any animal product that isn't, grass fed is giving you inflammation because those animals are inflamed. That's how they raise them.
And what is your sort of take on mixing the naturopathic with mainstream medicine?
Yeah.
What's sort of like your suggestion for all of us who, insurance covers this, but then insurance doesn't cover that? So like how we should be going about integrating these things.
Yeah. I'm an all the tools in the toolbox kind of doctor. I prescribe pharmaceuticals, not as often as natural things, but definitely, when they're appropriate. Of course, that's the right tool to use at the right time. Unfortunately, healthcare and pocketbooks are such an issue this year more than ever. I mean, I personally just had to renew my conventional healthcare insurance, and it went up $300 this year for insurance that I'm not going to use because I don't get the answers. Even going in as a physician and asking a fellow physician information, they usually turn the table around and want to ask me more things. So anyway, I was at dinner last night joking it's the most expensive mammogram ever, right? My health insurance.
Exactly. I was having the same conversation with my husband recently, was like, why am I paying all this in insurance when I literally, and I can't even get on the schedule. And then I finally get on the schedule and then like I said, same situation. It was just such stress that we're in this
and get dismissed.
Yeah.
I mean, so I use both, right? When possible, I bill labs through insurance. If you have good coverage and your deductible isn't crazy, we can bill lab tests through insurance. Sometimes the deductibles are just too crazy and it's cheaper to run labs through a cash pay lab.
Right.
So I have that as an option. Same with prescriptions. There are bioidentical options that are covered by insurance. They're not quite as, you can't fine tune them as much as you can compounded bioidentical hormones. But when the pocketbook is a major issue, those are certainly options. And honestly, that's kind of why we also started these programs is, you don't necessarily have to work with me for the rest of your life. You might just need a little reboot, kind of understanding, get some, empowerment on how to take care of yourself. And then maybe you only need to check in with me once or twice a year.
Right.
So those are some ways we've tried to make it a little bit more usable for doing both insurance and cash-based care.
Yeah, I think it's great that you came on this podcast because I feel like, we talk a lot about, we do a lot of lifestyle stuff, but when, we talk about women feeling good in their skin, so much about personal style comes from confidence. And when we start to lose our confidence because we're aging or we're not, our bodies aren't what they used to be when they're in their 20s and 30s, it really does affect us. So it is so valuable for our audience to realize that there are things that we can be doing. How would you work with someone who perhaps wasn't local?
We have telehealth programs.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do telehealth through most places. Prescriptions, work with people in California and Washington and Arizona and Colorado.
Right.
They need prescriptions, but if it's not prescription based, there's lots of options.
Okay. Where do you see the future of women's health and longevity going in the next 5 to 10 years? Like what excites you the most because you're on the forefront of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are at the beginning of a revolution in women's health. I think back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was starting in medicine, people didn't know what a naturopathic doctor was, right? They thought I was like an arborist taking care of the trees. And now people are, oh, that's great. I've been looking for a naturopath, or, oh, I follow so-and-so online. So I think the general public awareness of integrative medicine and natural medicine options is expanding every day. And the fact that you can get a B12 shot, in pretty much any town is such a big step forward. And we've got a long ways to go. I mean, the insurance system is a disaster right now. The hospital system, the buying up of the private practices. I think the biggest If I could wave my magic wand and change the healthcare system, I would love to see us go back to more of the small town family doctor dynamic where you have a personal relationship with your physician. She's known you for years. You can get into her office for a quick look in your ears or, a quick checkup for a UTI anytime. And it's accessible and it's personal. And most of the solutions in that situation don't require medications that cost $20,000 a month, right? It might just be you need like some hot tea with some honey and lemon to help your sore throat or to help you go to sleep more easily. So there's been some just amazing advances in the technology of, modern medicine. But I think 90% of the time, maybe not quite that much, but the vast majority of the time, we don't need modern technology miracles. We need simple solutions, compassionate care, and somebody who's available.
And like someone who cares. It's like what you're describing is so true. I remember many, many years ago, I got very sick. It was like I burned out. It was literally like Britney Spears burnout or something. Like I had been going really hard. And my husband at the time, we went to a doctor in LA. My husband is Belarusian, and it was like this Russian doctor. And he was old school. He was like probably in his 70s. He was like a family friend. And he literally said to my husband, she needs to stay home. You need to make the room dark. She's exhausted. Like my kids were young. My business was crazy. She needs to just drink juice. You need to bring her soup. And it was like, there was no medicine involved. It was literally like she just needs some rest. Like she literally needs to slow down. And like that was the prescription. And he delivered it with such care and love that I felt so seen and heard. Like, cause it wasn't like I was in a place where I was like going to slow down myself. It was like, I needed that doctor to say, she just is burnt out. She's having like, what is it? Like situational depression. It's just all happened all at once. And she just needed a break. And it was so cool. And so we saw that doctor for a long time, and he retired, and it was hard to go up to LA, but it was exactly what you're saying. Just to have somebody that is looking at the whole picture, knows your family history, is kind of growing with you, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like all these advances were made. We just started to miss like the value in the simplicity of things, and everything became so monetized and commercialized. And it just changed like from our food system to, so it's like some of the things that were so valuable that we've lost by all this progress is like what we need to come back to.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that your husband found that doctor for you at that time. Oh, that sounds like that was a really rough experience.
Yeah, it was really helpful to have someone, and I agree completely with you that is what we need. I guess in that, my question, just to circle back on like, what made you decide this was the industry for you? Like, did something happen in your life where you were like, oh, this is what I want to do? Or did it just sort of evolve?
It was a little of both. I grew up in a healthy family. My mother was an Adele Davis reader in the 70s and, always was giving us healthy food. I worked in a health food store for a while when I was an undergrad, but I actually started off in the arts. I thought my career was going to be in arts management. I worked for a opera company and a ballet company in my early 20s out of college. And I love the arts. I'm a huge patron of the arts. But I was finding myself really questioning, like, is really the most important thing where your season ticket seats are going to be this season? That was the crisis that we were dealing with every day. And I wanted something with a little bit more meaning. And so I'd always been interested in health and wellness. And I was kind of looking around, am I going to go back to conventional medical school or just medical school? I didn't know there was an option, or acupuncture or massage. Anyway, I didn't really know where I was going to go. And I was living in Seattle at the time. And a friend of my boyfriend said, well, have you ever heard of this university, Bastyr? And of course, I hadn't. And they sent me the catalog back when you got those things in the mail. And I read about their naturopathic medicine program, and that in 4 years I could go to medical school and learn not just anatomy and physiology and pharmacology, but also about herbs and vitamins and, hands-on therapies. And I thought it sounded just absolutely amazing. So I had to go back to school to do the biochemistry prerequisites and all the science that I hadn't done as a arts undergrad. But I did, and I got accepted into medical school. And honestly, I've loved it. I've done a lot of different things in my career as a naturopathic doctor. I've done clinical research. I did a NIH-funded postdoctoral fellow and ran clinical trials for the first decade of my career with things like echinacea and vitamin D and reversing diabetes with lifestyle, figuring out how to prevent second heart attacks with lifestyle programs. So I came from a pretty sciencey background for that first chapter, but then I've been in academics. I've been involved in a handful of, big clinics and small clinics over the years, community clinics. We started one in a retirement home a number of years ago that's actually still running under grant funding up in Edmonds, Washington. That's more of a community clinic. But now these days, I have a simple concierge practice in La Jolla. I work with an internist. So there's just two of us and a team of nurses and health coaches. And it's simple, and we do it that way on purpose so that we have time to take care of people and truly know our community and our patients deeply. So I'm doing that, and I'm combining that with, trying to bring these telehealth programs to a wider audience so that we can impact more people with these short focused programs that I think point people in the right direction and get them started playing with hormones or peptides or brain health or anti-aging or weight loss, those sort of focused places where we can get people going in the right direction and get them feeling a little bit better so that they can then go forward in their lives and impact all of the people, that they are positive influences for.
I love that. You're reminding me of Dr. Will Cole. Do you follow Dr. Will Cole?
I'll check him out.
You will. You'll love him. And he wrote a book like the anti-inflammatory diet and all of this. But he, has a big telehealth program, but it's almost like you're our local version, if you are from San Diego, of that. And like him, you could work with people all over the globe through a telehealth program.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite wellness treatments? I know, there's so many fun ones out there. Are there any that are your favorite, whether it's red light therapy, cold plunging? What are some of the things that, lymphatic, our friend?
Yeah. Camera's work.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite? Because that's the stuff I can't get enough of. I'm always going to want to try a new fun wellness. I did go to that year before I went on a trip to India a couple years ago, and I was doing the NAD, and I'd go in there and I'd hang out for 4 hours and get my NAD. And I will say I was the one person that did not get sick on that trip.
Amazing.
So something happened.
Yeah, exactly. Your cells were strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should see the pile in the back of my office here with all of my wellness toys, right? All the recreational wellness. I love the red light therapy.
Okay.
That's actually a very data-driven approach. I use red light therapy, especially with patients with neurodegenerative conditions, like after stroke. And it's a way that we can supercharge the mitochondria through the skin, through the light. And it does penetrate through the bone into the brain. So the devil's in the details on that. Of course, the $20 pen on Amazon is not the same as the $5,000 helmet that we put on the stroke patients. But red light therapy is definitely one of my favorites. I get a kick out of the whole, I love the hot and cold therapy, the sauna and the cold plunge. I go to the steam at my gym all the time. But, when I was in naturopathic medical school, we had a balneotherapy semester where the coursework was all about hot and cold and the application of those different tools. And our textbooks were from the 1920s because people weren't talking about hot and cold ever since, they were back in old nature cure, German spa culture of the early 1900s. But now it's found its way again.
Yeah.
And now it's the hip new thing. And how wonderful is that? Just the simple benefit of using your own shower, turning it up and turning it down. That's all you need. And it does add so much vitality and vigor, getting that little shock of cold to, wake your cells up.
What are some like mini habits like you think that everyone could include in their daily regimen? Like something very like maybe that we're just not thinking to do. Like if you were to give the audience just a few like micro habits for their longevity.
Yeah. Well, Jenny, I have a new book coming out in January that's called Healthy Hedonism. And
Ooh, I love that.
yeah, it turns out that feeling good is good for you. Anyway, there's a ton of little tips and habits in that book, but the whole premise is that taking anything you normally do can be an opportunity to create a more joyful, more pleasurable ritual. Instead of just pushing the button on the coffee pot and scrolling through the phone while the coffee's brewing, we could look out the window and take a few deep breaths and do a couple stretches. You can, find joy in instead of reading the book and scrolling on the phone while you wait for your kids to come out of school, you could be observing the joy and the laughter in the kids as they walk down the street. We can take ourselves outside for a 5-minute break in between Zoom calls to get a little sunshine on our face. I think all of those little micro moments of just giving yourself permission to do a little self-care and take care of yourself is tremendously profound. Putting the devices away a little earlier in the evening, making that cup of tea, having that conversation with your partner, and just kind of changing the tone of the evening, maybe reflecting on something that you were grateful for today, something beautiful that you saw, a funny moment, just redirecting our energy towards the positive, towards pleasure, towards things that feel good. We power through way too much in our lives, and it takes a toll, as you experienced firsthand when you collapsed.
Yeah.
So I think those micro moments are everything, and you can find them everywhere.
Yeah, I'm excited to read your book and hear more about it. It's like this is what I love about talking to naturopaths is that, and doctors that have this philosophy, is that there's like mindfulness tools, there's simple everyday practices that we just have to make space for to take care of ourselves. And I think, talking about perimenopause and menopause and women's health, we can't take away the mental health aspect, like how important it is for us to feel mentally well and not just try to like put a Band-Aid on all of this, like actually slow down enough to figure out what is really going on.
Yeah, that's really well said. Absolutely. Giving ourselves permission to take care of ourselves, not just feeling like we have to be stronger or harder, right? Or, if I just cut out that one last vice, I will be healthy. It's not about that. It's not about that.
Right. Wow. What a great conversation this was. Erica, tell us where the viewers can find you locally. Tell us a little bit maybe about your book, anything that if anyone's listening to this and wants to work with you personally, how they can reach you.
Yeah, my website is a great place to start, drericaoberg.com, drericaoberg.com. And we've got tons of educational resources on my blog posts, information about those programs. All of those are resources and options there. So that's a good place. I do live webinars on LinkedIn. People can find those. We have one coming up on November 20th on brain health. We can send you the link for people to register for that one. And that's really targeting, improving our cognitive performance for all of our fellow high achieving entrepreneurs who are on LinkedIn. So those are fun opportunities. And then my book will be out in January. So it'll be on Amazon. It'll be in the local bookstores, Healthy Hedonism. And I hope it inspires people to find a little bit more pleasure in their day-to-day lives.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. You definitely inspired me. So I'm sure you inspired our audience too.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you. And thank you for all the great work you're doing, bringing these messages to the fashionable women of the world. We need our style and our fashion as much as our health.
Thank you. We sure do. Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Take care, Jenny.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me on the Style and Soul podcast. I hope today's conversation left you inspired to look deeper, not just at the brands you love, but the stories and the people behind them. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. This podcast is produced by Oleg Livitz and edited by David Strutt. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep building your life with style and soul.